every organization, and this is my theory now, I will repeat it 5 times, every organization needs a Genesis perspective. Where do we actually come from? What is actually the background why we are here? I think it is very tempting for us as a church to go back just the way you see on this image here, where you see that they are going back to the origin, meaning Sarah and Abraham, when their own group was shaped, so to speak. That is in chapter 11, where you have the genealogy of Terah and his children, how they are moving and coming and becoming that family which contains Sarah and Abraham. And I'm writing in this little booklet that I think it's very tempting that we just start with that one, saying that this is our group, look how we started. And I think it is very important under this perspective to put another one before and say that the Genesis is further back than just our own organization. We have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be in this world? What does it mean that God put us in this world? And in that sense, we are in one way unique. The place where I am in Sweden right now is unique. Different from the situation you have in your church in Ethiopia and in other places. We are there right now. We are the first ones to have this very position in 2014. And when and if others come, it will be another context, another situation. What does it mean that God wants us to be here? We have a lot of people. We can count them in statistics. But one statistic we can be very sure about is that all of them have a certain stretch of life here on this earth, and all of them carry most of these big questions about life. What's the meaning of life? Does anyone love me? What do I do with my guilt, etc.? And how do we approach that thing? You will hear that I'm talking to my own church, and if you wanted to apply it to your own church, feel free. But I mean, what I'm trying to say to my own church is that I think in my case, I felt that sometimes it is a bit tempting just to go back 100 years and say, oh, we used to have a lot of people coming to church, and now we just have 72%. And I think that we have to be reminded that God is bigger than our short stretch of history. In my area where I come from, in the northern part of Sweden, it was a revival, a number of revival movements. One of them is called Swedish Evangelical Mission, a revival movement within the church. It's not the church itself. And there was a song which was often sung in my area, where they were saying, we want the old time revivals. And we say we want the old time revivals. And I've been provoking people sometimes saying that, but isn't this a problem that we want the old time revivals? We want it to be the way it was 100 years ago. Shouldn't we rather ask ourselves, what is really the new revival? What is God meeting us with here as we leave the origin we come from? Please feel free to ask, but I will have about this speed. And so the second perspective is, of course, the Exodus perspective. And in the Exodus, I was talking this morning about all the women who actually played quite an important role when they were making it possible for Moses to pick up his leadership. And I mentioned that in my morning prayer this morning. And for me, this is a fascinating thing to think about. And of course, the other is the whole story of Moses as he is leading the people then through the Red Sea and out into the desert. You could probably give a lot of examples if we had more time here, but I remember meeting people from South Africa who have been saying that sometimes we feel it was, it's for the next session, please, thank you. You can just leave it there. Yeah. People have been saying that sometimes we feel it was easier to be a church when we were under apartheid. Because then we had a clear exodus motive. We knew what we were coming out of, what we wanted to leave. Now it is not as clear, and it's actually what we talked about in the South Sudan seminar the other day. A dog with a bone in the mouth doesn't bark. When you get too close to the government, it's not that easy to know what does it mean to be a church. It was tough under the communist era, but in one way we really knew that we were a church and we had an Exodus perspective. It is more difficult now when we are in a capitalistic society. What is really the Exodus? We have a song which we used to sing in a Holy Communion service in Sweden, which was imported from Latin America, where it was saying, in our context, you are also a poor man. And we were singing about Christ who was walking among the poor people and transforming the society. But I used to say, and what is our Exodus motive today? What is Christ among us today? What is the Exodus motive for me? And here I think talking about an OD perspective, I also feel that perhaps where I'm not the only church or organization where I feel that we haven't, very often we've done just exactly the same mistake as Moses were doing. We didn't spend time to really sit down and ask, where are we going? What is our Exodus motive? Then I will come to the most difficult book here, and you know that it is the third book, which we call the Leviticus. How many of you read Leviticus regularly? Jonathan does. That's good. That's good. We have one reader. That's the truth. I think someone talked about it as it's just like getting into a big factory, and you just have a manual and you don't really know what's going on there in the factory. You just see a lot of map and drawings like this, but you don't really understand what is going on. This one with the 10 Commandments, I know it comes from the second book, from Exodus, but let's use this picture just for the sake of the law, so to speak. First of all, I must say that the book of Exodus is a book where I feel a little bit, I'm not that easy. I don't feel that ease when I come close to that, because the way we have been treating it sometimes in my church and in my context is that, of course, some of the rules by that time were rules for that time, and we feel perhaps a little bit of a courage to say that, because we can even see that Jesus was questioning some of the rules that we find in Leviticus. And with me, you know, being bold, and you see the way you should look at the bold people, and well, you have all sorts of things where you start wondering, hey, how do we treat that? And I say that it's a book which I jump over it and I leave it out. But nevertheless, when you read about the book, I feel that it's interesting to use it as a kind of a way into this reflection of an OD manner. Because I feel that you could say that the law, the way they built up the structure, was, at least from the beginning, the intention was that we want to make a good structure of interacting. We want to make a good structure so that the other people can see that we have a mighty God, and that they can see that we are organized in a way which is supporting the cosmic power, so to speak. Then from my side today, I can be rather critical seeing the way women are treated in this book, for example. But I feel encouraged when I see the way Jesus is facing the way women are treated because of some of these laws. And he wants to have them look at it in another way. Nowadays, in my church, we work quite a lot with what we call, I guess, Rick, you could help me, it's called systematic environment. Do you have a word for that?
Open systems, chaos theory?
Yeah, I mean, where you really must make sure that you have complaints mechanism, that you have a system for taking care of people if they get sick. Yeah, all sorts of these things. Yeah, and make sure that they are not worn out, etc. in their work. And I just wanted to put this perspective because I was saying yesterday, somewhere or along this week, I was saying that, I mean, in one way, we talk about our church as an organism. We are a body, we are together in Christ. But on the other hand, we are also, to a full extent, an organization. And we need to do the nitty-gritty work of getting down to what kind of rules and regulations do we have to secure that people have a good working environment. So that's the way I'm trying to use this book. I didn't want to leave it out. And of course, I think it is called numbers or numeri because it starts off with a numbering of the people. They are counting the people. And if you really scrutinize the lists that you have there, you will even see that they reorganize a bit. That someone who had one position gets another one in the next chapter. So it's a little bit of a restructuring. I find the book very interesting because this is also the book where Moses is getting some kind of criticism. He gets some criticism here in Exodus, the passage I was referring to this morning, when his father-in-law comes and criticizes him, the way he's doing his leadership. It comes in another shape. It could be the same story told in two ways, of course, we learn. But it comes in another shape, but it's also a matter of learning how to delegate. And this is also where you find the story about Miriam, his sister. You know, they had a small what you call it, a leading group, steering group out in the desert there, which was Moses, Miriam, his sister, Aaron, and his brother Aaron. Dangerous to have a steering group just with sisters and brothers, isn't it? That's right. That's something to look into. Anyhow, they had it. And at one point, they were criticizing Moses because he had taken a woman, another wife from another group, and they were criticizing her. And I think you remember that Miriam was punished with, what do you call that thing?
Leprosy.
Sorry?
Leprosy.
Leprosy, of course, yeah. She was punished with leprosy. And it was one of my friends who was showing out, Sven-Erik, do you see that it's very interesting that the people decided that they shouldn't leave until she was cured. They didn't leave her behind. I don't know what Moses would have done, but she was punished, but the people decided we are not moving until she is cured, and they wanted her to be there. Read that book and think about the way he is challenged and even criticized as a leader. And of course, the interesting thing, I was doing a work about this in my former diocese, is also when they are sending out these spies into the future. You know, they go to the future, so to speak, and they come back, and what do they carry back? Well, some of them has a long pole like this with a lot of fruit from the country, and they say this is milk, honey, fruit, everything. It's a wonderful country. We should all go there. But some of the others were saying that, well, we have a problem here, because the people are big like giants. And when we were standing at the side, we felt alongside, we felt like grasshoppers. And probably they also thought we were like grasshoppers. That's the way it says. And I like that passage, because that's really a double message that they come with from the future. Optimism and fear. And in one way I feel that perhaps that's the way a future spying for the future should be. We should not just say heaven is in the future, but we should say what is there in the future that we need to go through, but also what are the problems that we see. Now the biblical story takes it another way of punishing some of them, etc. But I'm leaving that out for the time being. I think for me it's interesting how they are coming back and as organization I think we can recognize quite a lot of our stretch of walk when we come close to the book of Numbers. Now Genesis is flying away, but I will end up by saying then a few things about Deuteronomium. Of course, if you study theology, you might be learning that perhaps in one way Deuteronomium is a way of just repeating things that were said here, but we have another source of origin and they tell the story with slightly different points. These rules are made for men. The inheritance rules are made for men. And they are bringing it to Moses, and Moses is bringing it to God. And it's such a lovely story because it shows that both Moses and God changed their mind. And I think it's an interesting story how an organization actually struggles with some rules that we've had. And they said, this rule is not really promoting the variety and the richness we have in the group. Let's look at them again. Then of course I was fascinated by the bishop who met us the first day and was actually picking this story where Moses, fresh eyes, still very healthy apparently, still leaves them. And of course we know the sad part of the story is that he was not allowed to enter with the people. But I allow myself sometimes to read it, asking myself, how prepared am I to be handing over to other people? And what is the challenge of being a leader and knowing that I've come this far, but other people will come after me and they will do it in another way? And what about this if Moses, healthy as he was, would have decided, no, I will go with you still for a while? Would he have been that old man who was criticizing Joshua all the time, making life tough for him? We talk about that sometimes when you retire as a pastor, move to another parish, because otherwise you will make life so sour for the one coming after you. Is there a wisdom in knowing when I should leave, when I should go, and when I should say, I let go, others will take it? I was fascinated by going back and looking at these books because I feel that if you have been in OD questions for a while, in one way or the other, you feel that what happens is that you read it with OD glasses. We were talking about it this afternoon. You read it with OD glasses and you see, oh, this is an organizational change, or no vision, mission, core values here, that's a problem. They will have problems and they find problems. And you can do it like this, and that has been a challenge for me to see that it has happened before. In one way, the people of Israel was just like an organization. What kind of origin did they have? Did they have an Exodus story which was strong enough? I would say no, because they were just saying we are out for a service out in the desert. We will see the Lord out in the desert. The Exodus story was quite weak. At Leviticus, I was saying, yes, they were struggling, and I would today say no to many of the rules they really invented. But I do agree that we all have to find timely rules for the time where we are right now. And I asked myself, are they dehumanizing someone? Are they putting men on the top, women on the top? What's happening actually? Here I recognize myself very much. And here perhaps it's on a personal level. I will retire in some few years, and I start thinking, what type of leader have I been? Will I be a good leader in also handing over to others? That's a challenge. But I think also as a method, the other thing I would like to mention is that one good thing with using these kind of biblical images is that when you start talking about them, you actually dare to talk about your own organization because you project your thoughts. And you say, well, if Jethro would come, he would criticize this and this and that. And you don't really say that our boss is not doing his job very good, but you use this story to talk about what is happening in your own organization. I think we have time for some few questions before Grace is leading us to the next. Any comments or questions?